Alright, hey guys. This is David Hike, and this is video 4 in our series on creating a Windows domain and installing an Exchange server inside of it. Okay, so we left off last time after we had just promoted our Windows server to a domain controller, so let's see how that went. Well, like I said, let's take a look at our net diagram first. I said we'd do this at the beginning of every video. Alright, again, so we are looking at DC1 and DC2, again in this video. Same as the last three. Haven't even touched Exchange yet, and we'll get to it. Okay. And let's get started. Okay. Alright, and this is the login screen for our domain controller. As you can see, now I'm signing into a nishnabmon/administrator, so I'm signing into a domain administrator account as opposed to my local administrator account. And as a matter of fact, you can no longer even access this computer locally. Well, actually you can sign into this computer locally still under a local user. However, I believe you may have there's something there. No, that's if you I take that back. You can still sign into this computer locally. However, if you depromote it from a domain controller, you will lose, it will erase a lot of your system information. Your Active Directory will be gone. A lot of things will disappear. Anyway, but we won't talk about that right now. So we want to sign in as our domain administrator. You have the same password as before. Okay, and we're in. All right. Okay, and as you can see, we still have our ADBS, DHCP, and DNS servers. Let's check our notifications flag. Okay, complete DHCP configuration. I don't think I'm going to touch on that quite yet still. So, we are up and running. We now have a domain, and currently it consists of only one domain controller. So now you can start adding workstations and other servers and other computers of any nature to this domain. There's an error again. Interesting. And you do that by, like I've shown you before, simply going to your advanced system settings on a workstation other than this one. Go into computer name and change. Okay, domain controllers cannot be moved from one domain to another, obviously. And you would highlight this field, select domain, and type in the fully qualified domain name of the domain that you wish to join. Just be sure that when you do this, that the workstation you want to join to the domain is pointed at a DNS server that is a part of this domain. Okay, so actually let's look at our lookup zones for DNS. Okay. To access most of these server roles, you click on the role itself, go to the server, and go to DNS Manager. Alright. So again, you can see we have dc1.initiative1.com. That's this computer. It's the only DNS machine we have in our domain so far. We have a forward and reverse lookup zone, trust points, which are not configured, and conditional forwarders, which are also not configured. However, we do have a forward lookup zone and we do have a reverse lookup zone. No, we don't have a reverse lookup zone isn't absolutely necessary in order to have a fully functional DNS system. Reverse lookup zones are good for testing purposes, and that's about it, I believe. Okay, we have the msdc.initiative1.com zone. This holds different miscellaneous system information along with records for your domain. I personally have never needed to configure this particular folder for any reason. Anyway, the folder we want to look at is the one labeled simply under the name of your fully qualified domain name. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Anyway, here it is. So, as you can see, you have a start of authority record, a name server record, and it consists of only DC1 and 2 host records. Now, you don't really need both these host records. You can delete one if you'd like. It's not going to make much of a difference. Now let's go to our start of authority record. Okay, there's some information here that you should familiarize yourself with. Serial number, primary server name, and this is the fully qualified domain name of your domain controller, dc1.initiative1.com. Okay, the responsible person for the server, you can put your email address in there. I'm not going to put mine in. Here is some attributes to configure on the DNS forward lookup zone. And typically, I believe these are within the right parameters. Refresh interval 15 minutes, retry interval 10, and expires after 1 day. Again, you can go online and find appropriate parameters for these attributes right here, and same for the TTL, time to live value. We're not going to focus on that in this video. So here are our name servers again. Security. This is just NTFS permissions by the looks of it. And by default, these are pretty good. And there's no real reason to modify them at this point. Generals tab. Dynamic updates. This thing is talking about updates for its DNS records. This being a primary zone won't really receive updates, so we can leave that as it is as well. Zone transfers, we aren't doing any zone transfers, so again, no need to mess with this. Zone transfers would come into play if you have a primary forward lookup zone and a secondary forward lookup zone. The primary zone would replicate to the secondary zone in what's called a zone transfer. So you would basically allow zone transfers to happen, and you would select the radical button only to the following servers, and then add the IP addresses of the servers you want it to replicate to, of the that hold the secondary forward lookup zones. Okay. So anyway, what we're going to do now, that's a little bit on DNS. We are going to add a local administrator, or not local, a domain administrator account to the domain. So if you can see, if you go to computer management, you will no longer have the users and groups option available here. Okay, this is a domain controller now, so it's not, and I'm logged into the domain as a domain on a domain account, so I no longer have the option to add local users from here. Okay, I can only add domain users and administrators. And to do that, you go to open Server Manager up again and go to Tools. And now you have these options are available, which weren't before you created the domain. So Active Directory, Users, and Computers. Alright. So we're going to drop down initialize our domain. We can add computers, which there are none currently. Domain controllers. These are just all further methods of organization. You can see DC1 is listed as domain controller. We want to add a user, so go to users. What you see here are a bunch of built-in security groups for this for Windows Server domain. I wouldn't delete any of them. Most of them are quite useful. In many situations, you may have to create your own group at times, but these will work in a lot of cases. So anyway, let's right-click in the blank field and do New User. Okay, we're going to create a user. I'm going to name them after myself. And skip most of the information. Logon name, David as well. Oh no, you know what I want to do is actually that. Okay. And there we go. The user is created, however, he's not a domain administrator yet. I have to go to properties of that user, just like you would locally. It's the same idea. Members of, and instead of just domain users, let's add him to the administrators group. Okay, click apply, and click OK. Okay, now you have a David is now a domain administrator. Little FYI, if I am logged into an account and make permission changes to that account, like let's say I'm logged in as a administrator and I add other groups to myself, like let's say I add myself to the Exchange organization role, or a group like that. Those changes won't take effect until you log out and log back in as that account. So in this case, I was actually the built-in administrator account, so it doesn't matter, but just a reminder. So we want to log in as another user, and we are logging into initial so I can just type in David and my password, and it should log me in. Yep. Okay, now I'm logged in as David. And now, again, a general good practice would be to, keeping security in mind, what you might want to do is rename your built-in administrator account to something other than administrator. So if someone ever did, for some reason, gain access to your server, they wouldn't know automatically which account is your built-in administrator account. Okay, we're not going to do that in this video, but again, something you can do if you choose. Alright, so now we have a domain administrator account. So let's join our other server to our domain. Looks like he doesn't want to respond. There we go. Just took a second. Okay, so this server is not a domain controller. It's not a domain controller. It's just a server with Active Directory services, DNS, and DHCP. So what we want to do before we promote it to anything, before we can promote it to anything, we have to join it to the domain that I just created. Okay. And it can't find a domain. That's because I am not pointed at my domain controller's DNS server. Okay, when I first configured the NIC settings for this server, I believe I have it pointed at Google's DNS server. Yeah, Google doesn't hold a record for anishinabemon.com because it's an internal domain. It doesn't exist on the web, nor should it. So the only way to actually join it would be to, by name, would be to add the IP address of a DNS server within that domain. So let's give it a 10.29.0.5, I think. Let's check really quick. IP config. .10. Okay. Now I've changed what DNS server I'm pointed at. I should be able to join my domain. Still want to be there. Okay. Okay, so, yep, so I know I've hit something. It's going to ask me for a username and password in order to join the domain, so let's supply it with administrative account credentials that I just created. And it should say welcome to anishinabemon.com. Okay, so now I have restart again, so it's gonna have to restart before it actually joins the domain. And I guess that's where we're gonna stop in this video. So basically what we've done is create a domain administrator account for your domain and just joined another computer to your domain. Okay, so I'll see you next time. Thanks.